Helping us today with the meeting, Jeanette Lujan with San Mateo County Executive Secretary, Michelle Rodriguez, who's our roundtable coordinator, Justin Cook, our own aviation technical consultant for HMMH, and we also have Birkenau from the Airport Noise Abatement Office. Please note that we will be recording this meeting and the recordings will be available on the Roundtable website in a few days. At this point, I will pass it on to Janet to explain how the public can participate in today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. For those attending the Zoom video conference today, you will be using the raise your hand feature in order to speak. You can also press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. Please also note that you need to raise your hand, but it has to be, you can't raise your hand on an item that's later in the meeting. You have to raise your hand at that time of the meeting. You will have, or that agenda item, will have 2 minutes to speak, and thank you. Any written comment will be available online. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, Ms. Lujan. We will move on. So we will call the meeting to order. And now for the record, we don't take a roll call, but I would like to introduce the members of the committee that are present. I saw Terry O'Connell from Brisbane. Was there anybody else? Michelle, did you see anybody else?
I did. I saw Anne Schneider, and then she dropped off. And I see Jeff Alfs, who needs to be moved from attendee over into panelist.
And Bert.
Yeah, we have Bert
Thank
already.
You. Sorry about that. I thought I forgot I had to join the separate link.
Great.
Welcome.
Well, welcome. Glad to have you here. So do we have anybody else that we need to introduce?
We do not.
Okay, and so having none, then we will move on to item number 2, which is a public comment. This is public comment for items that are not on the agenda, and staff will read written comments and allow members of the public to speak. So with that, Jeanette.
Thank you. I do see 2 hands raised, so hold on a second while I share my screen. First, we have
I don't know if you.
We can't hear you.
You broke up a little bit there, Jeanette.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. First, we have Jennifer. Jennifer, please accept this request, unmute your microphone, and begin speaking. Jennifer?
Hi, thank you. This is Jennifer Landesman, a resident of Palo Alto. In the last couple of meetings at the SFO general meeting, I detected a great deal of frustration from Roundtable members about, the topic of inclusion, exclusion, and so forth of communities that are not part of the SFO Roundtable. And just a little bit of history. This committee was set up right after Palo Alto was rejected from the SFO Roundtable years ago. And to be honest, a lot of residents in Palo Alto were never aware of the SFO Roundtable because there weren't any noise issues. And then with this situation, it was very hard to participate. But some of us who were a little bit more engaged, we were asked to come to this meeting. So we were invited. And I recall that when this technical subcommittee was set up, it was actually a little bit of an overture to address things that the SFO Roundtable was not generally doing that involved neighbors that were a little bit farther away. So I think it would be good to understand what this technical committee is. Now, during the select committee, it did turn over to become more an SFO Roundtable technical committee. But I just wanted to ask, maybe have a little bit of a reconciliation of how it went from being from its original conception to what it is today. And that way, at least I can personally say that I got the cold shoulder last meeting at the general meeting, and I don't want to cause all of this friction because I have questions that do not involve your communities. Thank you.
And so just clarifying, there is a committee description. It was part of the general meeting, and I'm happy to get you the already defined description of this technical committee as well as the other committees. And was not, as I interpret the language, developed to address issues not part of the larger roundtable, but an extension of that work for the actual work defined in the strategic plan and the work plan that was approved. So I think that point of clarification is necessary.
And Michelle, and my memory of this is that this was created to be able to get more in depth with some of the technical issues that we didn't have the time to discuss at the roundtable. So that is my memory of why this was created, and I think that that's kind of what we try to do. So next one, Ms. Jeanette.
We can't hear you. Janet, are you able to do the timer?
Yes. Hi, Mary Jo Fremont.
Yes, thank you. The chair is limiting public comments at roundtable meetings. This is a striking departure from previous practice. Also, a lack of dialogue is not effective for technically oriented discussions. I have offered the chair some suggestions to manage meetings more effectively while still allowing the public a reasonable opportunity to comment on each important item on the agenda. One suggestion was for the roundtable to address public comments in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, we speak on the same important topics meeting after meeting because our comments and questions are not addressed. Today, GBAS agenda item is an example of repeated requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Jeanette, do we have anyone else?
I do not see any hands raised.
Very good. Well, thank you for the comments. And with that, we will move on to item number 1, the night hush departures. And just as a way of background, a few years ago when the select committee got together, this is one of their recommendations. And in just real basic terms, we're requesting that airplanes fly further north and make a left turn over the Golden Gate versus flying over San Francisco low altitude. And so we've been working with the FAA to try to accomplish that. We are now talking about the timeline between 1 and 5 a.m. We have some members of the FAA group that are here to help us with some questions and answers. And with that, can I have Favi, could you introduce your team? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am Favi Garcia, the Supervisory Senior Advisor for the Regional Administrator in the Western Pacific region. And today with me are Marina Landis, the Community Engagement Officer. Also, Joe Burt and Eric Tanberg from the Operations Support Group in Seattle, as well as Beth White from our Office of Communications and Headquarters. And so thank you for the nice introduction of the request. Today, we're going to talk about the request. Last July, some of our folks actually briefed on the procedure, the night hush, and what was being proposed. And some questions remained from this group. So today we hope to address those. We're going to answer those questions and then maybe talk about a plan to move forward. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marina Landis to share the update with you.
Great, thank you.
Hello, so again, my name is Marina Landis, and as Fabiola advised, I'm the Acting Community Engagement Officer for the Western Pacific region. And is that my phone? No, sorry. One of the questions that was asking regarding the night hush procedure is whether the FAA could have the procedure go out to the GOBS waypoint and the facilities and the flight procedure designers, all the technical specialists that are involved with flight procedure design and air traffic management looked at the procedure, and the result is yes, the FAA is able to have aircraft go out to the GOBS waypoint, make their turn at the GOBS waypoint as they turn back towards their destination. For those aircraft that are going to southern destinations or southeast destinations, they would turn back and cross the shoreline. And I actually want to share, I forgot to mention that, to share a slide. So is it all right if I click on the share screen?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Okay, un momento.
And just clarifying,
There we go.
whoops.
So can you see an image that is black and gray with a purple?
Yes.
Great, okay.
And so hold on just one second, Janet, can you
Okay.
do me a favor and just move Mary Jo Fremont and Jennifer off panelist over to community, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so those aircraft that would be using the night hush flight procedure, they would follow the flight procedure route, through over the bridge. They would fly out to the GOBS waypoint, and then those aircraft that have destinations to the west, they would just continue west. Those aircraft that have destinations to the north or northeast would turn at the GOBS waypoint to their destinations north or northeast, and those aircraft that have destinations to the south or southeast, they would turn at the GOBS waypoint, turn back to cross over the shoreline, and then connect to one of the en route transitions, whether it's, the name is like Cantina. I always like waypoint names. It's kind of interesting how we come up with them, or the Suzy or the kayaks. And it's approximately about 80% of the aircraft that would utilize the night GOBS that have destinations to the south or southeast would use those three waypoints. And it's about 5% of aircraft that would have a destination to the south or southeast that might use the night TEL waypoint. And again, these are the fixes that have the aircraft when they cross over the shoreline, then would connect to this fix, which gets them onto the en route airway structure.
Marina, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Yes, please do.
So now if they do fly out to GOBS, could you kind of give me a guesstimate of where they would hit land when they're coming back around? And
So,
I know there's different scenarios for different waypoints.
right. So I guess a good guesstimate, again, I'm not a flight procedure designer, and I'm not an air traffic control specialist. So I'm going from the information that I have learned from chatting with our specialists. And if I can't answer it correctly, I will tap into Mr. Joe Burt or Eric Tanberg. But where they would cross back is, again, the aircraft would be going out to GOBS. So then it's a flyby waypoint. So they would begin their, there we go, would begin their turn and turn back. And the area, depending on which of the waypoints, the fixes to the en route airway structure they connect to, would probably have them in about this area. So it's kind of like just around Pacifica and then southward.
And could you give me a sense of what altitude they will be at that point if they do follow this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, under normal circumstances, aircraft, when they would cross back over the shoreline, would be at approximately 13,000 feet and above.
Okay, thank you.
So are you done with your presentation, or did we lose her?
Marina, are you still there?
Yes, I muted myself. I said yes under mute. Sorry about that.
Okay. Oh, okay. So the few questions that we had was, so the south transition to GOBS is a flyby or fly over. So I think I heard you say flyby.
Yes, it is a flyby waypoint. And I think some folks know, but what I've learned about the fly-by waypoints is the aircraft progresses on the flight procedure. They begin their turn in anticipation of the waypoint. And that waypoint has a unique, I keep doing that, sorry about that, has a unique latitude and longitude in space. And the turn in anticipation is also dependent on how sophisticated the flight management system, which is the onboard flight computer for that aircraft is. You know, each aircraft is equipped a little differently, and also depending, you know, on other factors such as if there's wind, the weather, what type of aircraft, but they turn, usually they begin their anticipation of turn within a mile or, within 1 to 2 nautical miles of the waypoint in order to turn.
Okay, and then the next question was, and again, we've asked this many times and received different answers, but the question is, why can't they just stay over the ocean as they go on the southbound routes?
Right, so part of that, what I've learned in my research is there is an overlap of airspace. So the Air Route Traffic Control Center is the FAA facility with the air traffic controllers that manage the flight procedures in the en route airway structure. And then there's airspace that's managed by the Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility, which is, and those chunks of airspace are managed differently. And when the aircraft, if they continued farther south, now it interferes with the airspace managed by the Air Route Traffic Control Center. So they have to be kept separate.
Okay. So at one point we were told there was some restricted space. What you're saying is a little different. It has to do with other commercial airplanes that are flying in the area that need to be kept at a distance.
Well, there's actually multiple things. There is special use airspace out there. There are warning areas out there, but there's also the chunks of airspace that are managed by the air traffic controllers that manage the flights for the aircraft that are above 18,000 feet in the en route airway structure, like going from point A to point B. And then you have the Terminal Radar Approach Control Facilities. Those are the controllers that take the handoffs from the en route airway structure and get aircraft ready to line up for arrivals at their airports, or if they're on departure, get them ready to hand off towards the en route controllers to get them up above 18,000 feet. But I could also tap into Joe and Eric because they have more specialized information on that than I do.
Great, thank you.
Chair, really it boils down to the procedure ends at GOBS, right? So there is nothing at GOBS. So the next fix would be whatever the next fix on the route is, which would be Kayak, Susie, or Kitna. So they would go from GOBS to that next fix, and that's pretty much the short of it.
Okay, thank you. I suspect that we'll have some more questions about that, but I appreciate that. And we discussed the altitude, and we can get into more of the detail. So with that, I'm going to just open it to my colleagues that may have any questions before we open it to the members of the public.
Sorry, Chairman.
Yes, Bobby, please.
Sorry for interrupting. I do want to recognize that the briefing for this was actually provided last year, and there were 4 remaining questions, and we'd really like to focus around that. I want to make sure that we address those questions and also have an opportunity to talk about next steps. So just with that in mind.
Would you like to talk about next steps before we go to questions?
I think that might be helpful if Marina, if we can go to that, and how we're going to accomplish this and so forth. Yeah,
that's great. Please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So the next steps will be to formalize the understanding that aircraft will be going out to GOBS. So the Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility, the TRACON, they're working on the process for having the letter of agreement, which is between the TRACON facility and the en route traffic control facility So again, understanding that their airspace is kept separate. There will also be a standard operating procedure document created so the controllers at the TRACON understand the operational procedure. And then there will be some automation that will be required and training for the controllers. So that process will take about 6 months or so to complete.
Okay, fighting with that mute button. Okay, so with that, so are we good now to go to the questions from the members of the roundtable?
Yes.
You guys good? Okay, thank you for that. Really appreciate all the new information. And with that, again, I will open it to members of the committee. Is there anybody who would like to ask questions or make a comment?
Terry has her hand raised.
Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi. So looking at this map that you provided, the black and white map, it shows that planes using the #1 runway, which we would assume would be the heavier planes using that runway, or depending on wind, would make a sharp right-hand turn to get up over the bay, right over Brisbane. They would be coming from behind our mountain. And so with that diagram that you've got, it looks like that would create a tremendous burst of sound on our neighborhoods.
And I'm sorry, to clarify, those are the ones that are coming off of 28 and making a right turn to go onto this procedure?
I think it's the
Yeah,
westbound.
Yes, okay.
And those are typically the heavier planes that require the longer runways. Would this procedure be encouraging the other runway when possible? Because I think that by pushing this procedure and making it standard operating procedure, that's going to put a lot of noise over Brisbane.
So I have noted your question, and I will follow up with the flight procedure specialists and the facility specialists. I don't have an answer for you at this time because I'm not a specialist regarding the operation. But just to clarify, so because the night hush is not a new flight procedure, and this just to reiterate, the standard operating procedure and the letter of agreement would just be for that awareness for controllers to understand that aircraft would fly out to GOBS. And then from there, that's the procedure ends. And then they would be making their turn to wherever they're going, depending on their final destination. So what I'm not clear on, though, where you said they're going to be turning right from runway 1?
No, from runway 28.
Should we go back to the graphic?
If you put the graphic back up, then you see what Terry was talking about. It's the flights that are taking off of westbound on that runway 28 and then making an immediate right turn to go onto this procedure. But I'm just curious, how is that? How are they doing that today? What procedure are they flying today?
Okay, let's see. Where did my graphic go? Hang on just a second.
And Mr. Chair, I think Bert has his hand raised and he might be able to shed some light on this too.
Oh, Bert, please shed some light.
I'm guessing that's why he had his hand. Yep.
Just wanted to say simply that the heavy aircraft typically aren't going to be on this departure. So Chair Connell, you can rest assured we're not going to see the heavy aircraft using this. Typically the ones going south like that are going to be the lighter aircraft such as 737s, A320s, things like that.
So Bert, can I ask a question just specifically about that? So what determines who goes on 1 versus 28 or 28?
Well, typically a 28 departure is going to be either for wind safety or the aircraft just requires it due to the size of the aircraft. Now, if it's a wind issue, okay, yes, we will experience that. And if it's a heavy aircraft, odds of that aircraft going south like that are slim at that time of night. Typically, they're headed to West Asia, and so they wouldn't be going south.
We've been having problems, just to clarify, we've been having problems with a Amazon flight that has been using the other runway and causing a lot of noise for us. And we've been told it's because that aircraft needs that runway. But it's a cargo flight that typically has been coming over since the end of March, over Brisbane at 3 a.m. And they're making this turn. And while they're doing it properly, it's very disruptive to us. But, you know, that puts it coming right over Brisbane. But again, I understand the changes are just once they're on the night hush to bring them clear out to Gobs instead of turning earlier. And I think that will be somewhat helpful for many communities. And I'm not sure if it will increase, with it being a standard operating procedure, will increase that use of that runway at all for us.
So, and again, the question I have is right now, so without this change, where are those planes going once they leave runway 28? Are they going right and then left over San Francisco?
So I'm going to have to make note of the question because, again, I'm not a flight procedure or air traffic controller. But just one clarifying thing. So for the standard operating procedure for the air traffic controller's awareness is to understand that aircraft will be flying out to the Gobs waypoint. There won't be early turns from the night waypoint to the Gobs waypoint, because I know that was one of the questions before. So as far as how aircraft depart the runways at San Francisco and what the other parts of the flight procedure are early on, that wasn't part of the question or part of the ask. So I will follow up on that question and back.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have any other questions?
Sure, 3 hands raised, Kathleen Wentworth, Justin Cook, and Sam Handy.
So let's start with, I don't know who came first, so I'm just gonna go with Kathleen in the order that Michelle said them.
Hi, can I share my screen so I can ask a couple of questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, if I have permission.
Okay,
Okay, let's see if that works.
Yes, you do. There you go.
Working?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So I just had a couple of questions as Marina was talking, and unfortunately the black and white image doesn't have a lot of detail in it, so it's hard for me to add things to it. But I just added a few lines on here so I could kind of have an idea myself where things would be looking at. But first of all, Marina or your team, we talked about some of the aircraft from Gobs going south. Is there any more southerly destinations such as Orange County and the other ones that would go to a fix other than these 4 fixes? You know, the ones that used to go on the forgot the name of that departure. Maybe Joe?
Somebody,
Joe?
I don't know, maybe somebody's muted.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not sure if I understand your question because, again, I'm not a flight procedure designer or air traffic controller.
Sure.
And I know
But isn't that what Eric's here for and Joseph?
So can Joseph answer a question?
Yeah, I know there's lots of flight procedures and lots of destinations. So do you have maybe a little more specifics that I can note and then I could follow up on that?
Well, I think it's, sure, I can do that. But maybe since Joe seems to be here, I think he could probably answer the question. And the question is simply, we talked about flights that would go to NTEL and the three fixes down here. But most of the time, flights going to places like Joseph, you know, Santa Barbara, Orange County, Long Beach, all of those go down over the water, do they not? Essentially? They
Yeah,
have a
I
path.
believe that is correct. I don't know what those fixes are or where they're located, but I believe that there are some that will go that way. But
Okay,
I am not positive on that.
Yeah, I would believe you're right, that there are planes that go south from Dobbs. So we talked about 80% going here, 5% going here. So that still leaves 15% going someplace else. And I'm going to guess, I don't know if 15% is right, but it's about right. So there are some flights going south here that seem to be able to transit the coordination required between TRACON and Air Route Traffic Control Center in an adequate manner.
And Kathleen, I just wanted to say that these lines aren't really an accurate representation.
I fully respect that. I just did this in the last 5 minutes just to throw something up on the thing. So I apologize. If I had had this map in advance, we could have had a better image. But this is all I can do with straight lines. I don't have any fancy software. So my only point is that somebody said something about the difficulty of coordinating between TRACON and the Air Route Traffic Control Center because of the southbound nature of the flights that we would ask them to go on. That is the Roundtable suggesting that they go southbound a little further. And so this coordination was brought up. And my only comment is that I believe the coordination like that takes place every day when you have these other 10 or 15% of the flights that are going to those specific destinations, such as Santa Barbara, Orange County, Long Beach, San Diego. There's a few more I'm missing, San Luis Obispo. So those flights are going southbound already. So.
And again, one thing I'd like to look into though is I know that this night hush procedure is only during certain hours from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And my understanding it's in support of the, believe the cargo flights. And I don't know about the other flights going to other destinations, what you may be referring to, if that's maybe the majority of the other types of flights and the daytime flights where we have aircraft, going from point A to point B, because I know there's lots of air traffic between the airports all through California. So there is just a limited number of aircraft that would be utilizing this procedure out to Dobbs and then going on to their destinations. And so that's why I'll look into a little bit more for you. And just one clarifying point, what I have learned, again, I'm not a air traffic controller or a flight procedure specialist, but what I have learned in understanding that even the airspace that's managed by the air traffic controllers for the en route environment and the airspace that's managed by the air traffic controllers, the terminal environment, and even that airspace that's managed by air traffic controllers at towers at the airport, those airspace chunks need to be separated. So there is requirements. There's the FAA orders that talk about maintaining that separation. And any kind of coordination for flights, yes, that does happen. But again, it would depend on what flight it is, what the final destination is, things of that nature. So I can't really, I would like to do a little more investigation to help answer your question. So I've written it down.
Okay, and you guys, I just want to let you know, we're running out of time on this item. So if we could just keep the next few questions brief. So, and then it sounds like we may need to do another meeting or just schedule another meeting to get some more detail on this. I hate to cut this off because I think this is a huge issue, but I do have two other items that I have members of the public waiting for. So
Chairman,
with that.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I apologize. We did have this briefing back in 2020 in July. The briefing was provided. We had questions, we took those away. We're coming back with the best, the best possible solution based on what was recommended. We feel that this meets the intent of what you wanted to accomplish. So I'm wondering, based on the last roundtable conversation, it sounded like there was some concern about this. So we're offering this in hopes that we can move forward if this is what you want to do. And rather than having another
I have two other members that had questions, and we'll open it to members of the public, and then maybe we could wrap it up. But I just want to get through this one because I do have two more, but I will get to what you just said, and we'll talk about moving forward. So With that, I think I had the vice chair waiting.
Thank you, Chair Ortiz and Ms. Landis. Thank you for your presentation. And I apologize if this has been answered as I joined the meeting late. Is this slide that we're looking at any different than the former slide that we received at the last meeting that had a lot of shaded areas, or is this the same, just cleaner look?
And can we remove this slide because this is Kathleen Wentworth. This is not FAA slide. So we want to be careful what slide we're referring to, or
sure, yes.
Do you want to look at the purple slide that that HMMH presented at the last meeting? Is that what you want to see?
And I guess, hey, the difference was the HMMH one showed how the turns begin a lot earlier than GOBS. This one is kind of giving us the indication that the airplanes will fly all the way out to GOBS, which is why it looks cleaner. Correct, Justin?
That's correct. That is correct. Yes. The previous graphic, just to clarify, showed turns that were prior to GOBS and earlier, as soon as maybe the Golden Gate. And then this graphic is showing that they would not turn early. They would go at or after GOBS before turning.
Thank you. Well, that's all I wanted to clarify. That's how I understand it, but I want to make sure that is the case.
Perfect. Thank you. And there was one more hand raised. I apologize. I don't remember who it was.
That was me. That was me,
Justin,
Mr. Chair.
please.
Kathleen, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
So I just wanted to clarify, I understood Terry's concern, but I think it's important to realize that this is an existing procedure. And in my opinion, the runway usage isn't really what we are focused on here. It's really going back to the roundtable recommendation to the FAA, which was to create or implement a south transition. And looking at going from night to GOBS, which we asked for in certain timeframes. So we've already addressed, I think, or got FAA understanding over the specifics of the timeframe. We had additional concerns regarding turning early before GOBS, which I think this now addresses. So from my standpoint, in terms of reading the roundtable recommendations that came from the select committee, this meets the intent of basically what we were trying to get at in terms of a south transition and getting that use, especially at the nighttime time frame. So just wanted to clarify that and kind of circle it back around to what we were initially asking as a roundtable body.
Right, and thank you for that, Justin. And then with that, I think we need to open it to members of the public to see if we have any comments from the public. So Jeanette, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Chair. We're now opening public comment for item number 1. As a reminder, if you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand through the Zoom feature. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Mr. Chairman, we have one written comment from Rebecca Ward. This comment was sent to the committee members ahead of time. And let's see if you have any other, I don't have any other written comments at this time, but if you want to speak on this item, please raise your hand. And I do see 2 hands raised for this item, actually 3. So I will first call on Peter Grace, followed by Jennifer. So Mr. Grace, please accept this invitation, unmute your mic and begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Peter Grace. I live in Brisbane. Terry O'Connell said the takeoffs from 28 that fly over Brisbane at 1 to 5 p.m. are really bad for Brisbane. I would like to remind everybody that the runway chosen is by the flight procedure being put in, or the flight plan being put into the FAA computer program, and it's the FAA that decides. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, Janet. We're going on to our next speaker. If you could reset the timing.
Thank you. Was muted. Thank you so much. I now see Jennifer. Jennifer, please accept this invitation, unmute your microphone, and begin speaking.
Hi, thank you. Jennifer Landesman from Palo Alto. I've been increasingly concerned about how the name night and the mention of the select committee makes it sound like this is the night recommendation about nighttime from the select committee. I support nighttime, dealing with nighttime operations for the entire Bay Area, but the select committee was convened in order to address next gen issues, and we've been addressing the, looking for attention to these from 2014, and there's 2 other counties that were very concerned about nighttime noise, but the only deliverable that the FAA has provided is night. And I'm just wondering, isn't it time to have like a system approach to the whole nighttime issue with 3 Bay Area airports? And since the FAA is here and you're having a summer workshop, I would just like it to be distinguished. And I will send some video replays and some more information about how the select committee evolved, but this was a high priority for thousands of citizens that are not just in San Mateo County, not just near SFO Airport. And I'm very supportive of the work that is being done, but I'm just wanting to clarify this because the FAA administrator actually listed this as a major success, but like a whole swath is being forgotten in the meantime. And when the FAA declares wins or accomplishments, I just think that there has to be some criteria to also understand how they choose to prioritize certain things. And ideally, it's time with NextGen being a system-wide change that there should be some system approaches to addressing nighttime noise in general. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, this item did not have to do with all the select committee recommendations. We were just speaking about one. So just to clarify, that is what we're doing here. So with that, then we are going to close the public comment, and I'm going to bring it back to my.
Just clarifying, Mark Scholl has his hand raised.
We have one more.
Great, and let's make sure that we are speaking on this subject, and we do have 2 others to go. So go ahead, Mr. Scholl.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, I just wanted to point out, and I'm not, people have mentioned history. This very same procedure was put in place in 1989, and it failed because planes turned early over Pacific Heights. San Francisco complained in the airport, and FAA canceled it. So I think the focus on making sure that, particularly if it's a flyby at GOBS, that in fact planes don't turn early, because again, this is the second time this has actually been put into place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, there are no more hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll bring it back to colleagues. If you have any final comments, and then we can talk about if you have any concerns about moving forward, because I think that that's what we are hoping to do, is kind of get a nod to move forward. So colleagues, any thoughts, any questions? Kathleen, if you were there, I would love to hear your take.
Yes, I do have some comments. I think it's, despite the number of meetings that the FAA has attended here, I think that there are still a great number of unanswered questions. And I think we need to present in writing to the FAA these detailed questions. For those of you who weren't around, I just want to give you a tiny bit of background. The Select Committee and the Roundtable were co-equal types of committees that dealt with issues in response to NextGen and other issues at the time. And the Roundtable came up clearly with a recommendation on this night hush. We were pleased that the Select Committee chimed in and also agreed that that was an important consideration. But this was the Roundtable's recommendation from the beginning. And this recommendation, the existing procedure, the night procedure already existed all the way to Gobbs intersection. That was a pre-existing procedure for since NextGen. And so it was always in place to Gobbs. So all the roundtable said was, let's go from Gobbs and find a southbound leg over the ocean. That's all. Simple. You know, put it here, keep it over the ocean until it gets high enough, then put them on their flood paths. So I'm very pleased to see that they're taking it out to Gobbs. That's terrific. And that's a great start. I do think that we need to talk about the ones that are going to go to Entel, that those are the kind of the sharper turns. And if they're going to be at 13,000 feet or not. Got to remember these airplanes are going to be at full climb power. They're going to have it leveled off, accelerated to 350 knots or more. So the noise level, even at 13,000 feet, will be noticeable, in my opinion, at climb power. And so I think there's a lot of questions that are not answered about noise, about exact turns. I think going to Gobbs is a terrific, thank you FAA for making that concession. And so I personally have at least a dozen questions of a technical nature that will make a difference in how this is flown and how this is perceived by people on the ground. So I would strongly urge we have a lot of questions presented to the FAA and we have a thorough briefing in response to those and whoever else has questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other members that have any final comments? No, and then so here it comes to us. So what, again, there's just a few of us here. And so we're being asked to just kind of give a nod. And it seems like we still have a few questions that need to be answered. So what's the thoughts, colleagues? What are you thinking? We should probably send some questions and then bring it up maybe to the full membership later on.
I agree that we really get Kathleen's questions and any other questions we have about what happens when they leave Gobbs and where the noise is going to go with these differences, and then bring it back. Once we get those answers from the FAA, bring it back to the entire group. I don't think we really have the ability to tell the FAA to go ahead with their 6-month, process at this point.
Okay. Sam, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I very, very quickly, I totally agree with Kathleen's statement. I remember vividly the intent why this was recommended by the select committee. It's exactly what Kathleen said, for those aircraft to go over water, going south rather than go over land. So, but I will defer to Kathleen's questions as far as technical is concerned. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so with that, Fabi, I don't know if you have any final comments that you want to make. I think that we're leaning towards sending a few additional questions in addition to the ones that we've already discussed that I think Marina took some notes on. So any final thoughts from you?
Only that rather than relying on Marina's notes because she was presenting, I would like to request that if you do have questions, just send them to us in writing. Let's get that clear and we can proceed that way. I would like to understand though, if the technical group here decides that you're going to move forward, then you present it to the roundtable or you still have to take it to the roundtable to vote? I mean, can the decision be made here within the technical working group without taking it to vote?
I really don't. We can recommend it to the full roundtable, but I think the decision needs to be made at the full roundtable.
Okay. All right. That was just for my understanding.
And I wanted to recognize that Beth White has her hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I cannot see the hand. So, yeah, Beth, if you could, please.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. And I guess I just wanted to speak to where we are and ask a few questions myself, I guess, is I understand that now there are some additional questions about how we would operate in the airspace that Kathleen is asking. I think that I want to go back to the request in the questions that we go to GOBS, and that the FAA is willing to commit to doing. And I even heard from some of the other members that was tried in the past with early turns. I think we just discussed some of the key things that we're willing to implement to ensure that doesn't happen. I understand the intent is to fly less over the land and more over the ocean. And I think that that's what we're doing here. I think when we get into how are we going to be changing how we are connecting flights in the airspace going on is going a little past where we started. And I guess what I'm wondering is there might be some clarity to that, but are these really questions on whether this procedure may offer some relief to the people on the peninsula? We know that where the turn is originating at GOBS, under normal flight conditions, we're going to be crossing over the land south of San Francisco at or above 13,000 feet. I guess I'm concerned that we have something that the FAA has addressed very seriously, and we've all spent a lot of time on, and it feels like that we have a good solution here. So I guess I just want to see, could we look at a hybrid of accepting this and saying that we will in writing respond to some of the questions that were asked, but that the intent of what was asked here has been addressed. And we would really like to show some progress and move forward on this particular recommendation. I feels like we especially with the GOBS transition, there's a lot that's gone into ensuring that that's going to address the rest of the issue and some of the folks there.
Ricardo.
I can't speak for myself. I think that yes, Michelle.
Ricardo, I think that what I'm hearing is that our MOU does not allow us to create impact to other jurisdictions. And so what wasn't able to be answered today is what was the impact when there was the flying over to whatever that connection was, Intel. That was one question. And then whether there was creating more noise as a result of the change to one jurisdiction. So I think that they absolutely answered all of the questions that we wanted. And it does sound like we're in the right direction. And it's really great. There's these leftover parts that you don't know whether it's going to create a problem. And nobody here seems to want to answer the question. So that's what's kind of holding us up, is that we don't know the answer to those questions.
Michelle, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So are you speaking about any environmental review? Because I think we can answer a question about the review of this, and I don't know if
the question was, as I heard it, was if X% of the planes, I think somebody said 80%, was going to go to one of the fixes, which was Intel. Was this proposed procedure, increasing flights to that location or changing heights that would affect Oakland? No, you said no.
I would let Joe, I would say to the service center, maybe Joe can speak to that, but I mean, we're flying to GOBS and turning, those are existing fixes that aircraft would be joining. So the numbers that they were referring to was, I guess, the southern points is based on the time of day and the flights that were going out. A certain amount of them were going to the Pacific, out to Asia and to Honolulu. And some that were turning would have a southern location where those 3 points, the Kayak, the Cantina, and Susie, I think it is. And the Intel was one that's only used about 5% of the time, especially in that evening window. So it's nothing is no increase is happening on those other areas based on this change. These are existing fixes. So there's
the answer to that question. Then the other remaining one had to do with Terry's, and maybe it's not an issue related to GOBS. Her issue that's being raised now is the Amazon flight problem during the 3 a.m. and it's a cargo flight over a certain one. So maybe it's unrelated to GOBS and we could set that aside and deal with that separately.
Yes, and I believe that's accurate. And I see several heads bobbing in unison, including Bert.
Okay, so So really we're down to our questions that were originally raised and the solution that is offered. And I'm hearing a majority of people in support of that. And so if the committee felt like the proposal that which Marina laid out, which was TRACON working on the process, getting a letter of agreement, TRACON and en route traffic control facility, creating standard operating document to create and automate and train the controllers process will take 6 months. If they're happy with that, then that's something they could make an action item on today and make it go forward as a report.
So clearly what we have right now is a huge improvement for those people in San Francisco. And so the question was, what would it do to the people of Pacifica once those planes came around? And now they're flying at 13,000 feet. So all in all, this procedure, in my mind, the changes are a huge benefit to the community. And I would be, for one, I'd be willing to move forward with it. But again, I defer to my my colleagues that were. So I'll bring it back to Sam and Terry and see how you guys think. And I'm sorry, there was one other person on.
Okay, thank you, Chair Ortiz. So I just want to, I definitely, in response to Ms. White, I definitely recognize the progress, and no question in my mind that this is a progress from where we were before. But I think Kathleen raises a good points as far as the possibility of having the flights go further down the ocean. I, for one, am happy to move forward ahead with the proposed hybrid as far as bringing this to the roundtable in conjunction with responding to the questions that might come up on how we could get these flights to go down the water if possible.
Okay, Terry?
I would agree with that, but I do think we need to have a little bit more questions answered before we can take it to our roundtable and get their vote, their approval.
Okay, so
Jeff has his hand raised too.
Jeff?
Yeah, I agree with what Sam said. I think I could be comfortable moving ahead. I think what we're looking at is definitely an improvement, but obviously we also have a lot of questions that we want to go forward with. But I don't want to hold up sort of this process to get every last question answered. I think it's clear that this new procedure taken at face value is clearly an improvement. We should see what other improvements we can make going forward, but we should probably start this one as well.
Okay, good. And I totally agree with everything you guys all said. So I'm ready to move forward. So now, do we take a vote, or are we just giving you a direction? Michelle, what do you guys need?
I'm happy with you taking a vote. If you can summarize that.
Okay, so what we have arrived at is we have agreed to a hybrid where we're accepting the proposal as presented by the FAA with the caveat that we do have a few more questions that we'd like to address. However, we do feel that it is a huge improvement and we're ready to move forward. So that is my motion, and I'll take a second.
Happy to second.
And so then we will vote by roll call.
Member Ortiz.
Yes.
Member Alves.
Yes.
Member Hindi.
Yes.
Member O'Connell.
Yes.
Member Schneider.
Yes.
Am I missing any member? I apologize.
I don't remember anybody else.
I think that's all. The motion passes.
Very good. Thank you, Michelle. And you guys, I'm sorry, but let's rush into item number 2. And we're going to do the GBAS. Again, guys, we went so far over this one. I apologize for what we're going to have to cut at the end, but let's push forward with this. And I'm sorry. So we have had presentations before on GBAS. We had a few items that we want to clarify as far as the roles for the roundtable and the SFO. We had received those clarifications as far as our involvement being only on the proposed innovative procedures, not the overlay. And so with that, I will pass it on to SFO staff to give us a presentation, and we will go from there.
Won't waste any more of your time, but I want to introduce Paul Hanna, who's our consultant, and we'll be going through the presentation today. So if you'll pre-clear him to present, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Great. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Just a quick check.
Yes.
Thanks. So, and thanks, Bert. I'm going to try to cover kind of three groups of information here in the time we've got remaining. The first is the handout that we distributed in advance of today's call. I'm on page 2 of that handout. This was page 1, basically. And the information we've got in the handout, I think, is intended to provide the airport team's perspective on the overlay approaches that are being developed, and then transition us into some of the emerging information about the innovative approaches. In particular, what we're referring to as the community flight procedure packages. And then one of our, I think, more exciting updates, which is how we've posted a bunch of new information onto the SFO website. So those are the three things I'm going to cover. I'm going to try to do them all in one stream and then get out of the way and allow everyone to field questions. So up on the slide here for starting with the overlay discussion, we just wanted to provide a little bit of background on the FAA's use of the term overlay procedures. And it basically started kind of a long time ago, not so long ago for many of us, but the concept of using overlays is important for the FAA to demonstrate new technologies, in particular when it comes to flight procedures. So in the 1990s, when the first concept of using the GPS constellation was introduced into the world of approaches and departures, the idea was to create one of these new GPS approach procedures and literally overlay it onto another existing approach. And that's kind of where the term overlay was born. And in particular, as you can see on the graphic here on the right, the FAA would publish 2 different means of navigation for the same procedure. So same waypoints, same altitudes, same runway, and they would just say something like, this is the VOR DME approach, or it's the RNAV GPS approach. And the idea of using an overlay was so that all of the stakeholders that were getting introduced to this new navigational technology could gain experience in a safe and repeatable fashion. Now, when we're talking about overlay operations here for the GBAS project, we're talking very specifically about approach procedures that have to be overlaid. So we think about it kind of similar to this GPS setup. More recently, we see examples of this for the wide area augmentation system, which results in things like LPV approaches. And the same concept was used there as well, where you have existing RNAV GPS approaches. The FAA and the aviation community wanted to experiment with using the new wide area augmentation. And so the LPV approaches were first created, kind of built right into the existing RNAV GPS. Again, the same tracks where air traffic control would expect the airplanes to go, similar nav databases with same waypoints, and again, trying to build experience in new navigation methods. So on page 3, here at San Francisco, even though GBASs have been around for a little while, certainly in the United States, definitely internationally, the GBAS is still kind of considered to be a new navigational technology. And it's very important for not only the airport as the owner of the non-federal NavAid, but all of the other air traffic and aviation stakeholders to gain that experience on the system first. And so what we're able to work with the FAA in our initial implementation phase is to get overlay approach procedures of existing approaches that are out there. So, but perhaps the right term to use for the overlays that are coming up here for SFO is that they are identical overlays. So, you can imagine that when the FAA was experimenting with things like using GPS for arrivals and departures in the past, you were talking about, a fairly dispersed area of aircraft that were now, being considered to, be aligned onto GPS paths. But when we talk about approaches, we're talking about needing to have aircraft match each altitude, each waypoint, and each lateral track heading into the runway. So really what we're looking at for the 4 overlay approaches that will accompany the San Francisco's GBAS is they have to have identical waypoints, identical altitudes, approach angles, etc. In addition to these overlay approaches, being identical in all forms to existing procedures, that does kind of limit some of their usability here at the airport, because there are already ILS and RNAV procedures. They go exactly the same direction. And because the equipage on the airplanes to use GBAS procedures is not 100%, when, if things continue on schedule for the 2nd of December, 2021 for the overlay procedures, we're not expecting a lot of aircraft to actually use these approaches from day one, because there's nothing terribly unique about them other than the fact that they're using this new navigation technology called the GBAS. Page 4, one other, I think, very important piece that we want to kind of highlight here is, if you're familiar with approach procedures in the past, where we were moving from like an ILS and then introducing an RNAV method to put over the top of it, when we're talking about a GLS overlay, the only thing that's really different between it and the RNAV procedure that it's based on as its overlay is one small section of the approach procedures. And on page
Paul,
4,
can you just define RNAV and just try to be careful with the use of, define things, please, as you go?
Sure.
Or at the beginning. Thank you.
Yeah, my apologies. So RNAV is, it's referred to as area navigation, which is the means of using just the GPS constellation to have aircraft navigate to the runways at the airport. As opposed to kind of the traditional methods like an ILS, which is an instrument landing system. Those are what are referred to as conventional nav, where you have like a fixed antenna installed in a known position on the ground, and it's beaming a signal out in space, and then the aircraft kind of maneuvers to find that signal and then safely makes its way to the airport. When we switch to GPS, the collective term for those GPS approaches today is RNAV, and then we make sub-distinctions, or the FAA makes sub-distinctions. So RNAV GPS means an area navigation approach using just kind of general GPS signal reception. And our GBAS approaches are merely augmenting the precision of the aircraft's ability to navigate along those existing RNAV GPS procedures. So what you see here on page 4 are the 4 RNAV approaches that are going to be used as the overlay basis for what's coming up in the 2nd of December. But really the only thing that's different is which navigation mode is used in the red rectangles on the screen. The entire remainder of the procedure is still the aircraft navigating using its kind of traditional RNAV GPS methods, either using just lateral navigation or using lateral and vertical navigation. So just to be very clear, the difference between what is slated to come online on the 2nd of December and what's out there today in the Bay Area is just the aircraft using an augmented, slightly more precise navigating method in those red rectangular areas. Translates to about 5 to 6 miles exactly along the extended runway center line. Everything else should be precisely the same as what aircraft are doing today. So just a bit more information about making sure that is definitely going to be the case. So you've probably heard from previous presentations that the airport project team and the FAA are working closely together to understand how each team is moving certain aspects of the project forward. Right now, the overlay approaches are currently being developed by the FAA using their standard procedures. And you can track the progress of these GLS overlay procedures on the IFP Gateway, which is the FAA's website, shown here on page 5 on the right. That's where you can see the dates of the procedures that are currently being published. One of the things we want to point out is that because these procedures are still under development, it's entirely possible that small changes can occur to them if the procedure that they're based upon changes as well. So one of the things you'll see here on page 5 is, I think the airport and this technical working group have been briefed in the past on possible changes to one of the arrivals into the airport. Again, arrivals being how you transition from the high altitude infrastructure down to getting to the getting to the approaches, and then the approaches actually take the aircraft the rest of the way into the runway. So one of the more important possible arrival changes that we're trying to pay attention to and understand what that might do to the overlay approaches is the surfer star, because there's a possibility, again, that might change the beginning of one of the overlay procedures for the GBAS. So if there is a change to that surfer star, because it's still under FAA development, while the GLS overlay approaches are being developed, then we would expect the GLS procedure to be modified to match whatever the new surfer star is, along with all the other existing approaches at the airport. we don't have any updates on that today. I just wanted to point out that, you know, we're kind of watching this and we expect that the FAA would make the changes to the GLS overlay procedures the same way that they would make changes to the existing ILS and RNAV procedures that are there today. A quick note, for those of you that have been tracking with this project for a long time, you'll probably recall that we had requested 5 procedures to be overlaid at the beginning of our GBAS project. One of them was the LDA approach to 28 right. Unfortunately, there is no current FAA criteria that permits a GLS approach at a significant offset angle to a runway. And so we weren't able to successfully carry that one forward. And in fact, that procedure is actually going away at the moment. You can see it's being canceled. Last thing really quickly to point out on the overlays, there are some changes to the procedures that are already going to be put in effect relative to the GLS overlays. So in the IFP gateway, you'll see these 3 procedures right here. All of them are related to 19 left, runway 19 left and runway 19 right. And those are changes to the missed approach procedures that are being made to enhance the safety and feasibility of closely spaced parallel runway operations. So the changes that are coming to the ILS and the RNAV, they're also going to be applied to the GLS overlay approach. But what is changing is just the missed approaches, which is the non-standard kind of thing that happens if the pilots or air traffic decide that, you know, maybe the planes are getting too close together or one of the pilots can't see the runway and then they have to break off the approach and try again. So that's not the typical usable aspect of the procedure. So on page 6, again, these overlay procedures are still being developed by the FAA. And in particular, the FAA is still evaluating the environmental effects of those overlay procedures, because FAA developed procedures have to go through FAA environmental processes that are NEPA compliant. So that's still ongoing right now, is our understanding of this. And again, just to point out, if there was a change to one of the arrivals that connects to those overlay procedures, then we would expect, you know, all of that to have to kind of go forward again. What we are working on relative to the airport and our project team trying to bring information forward are the innovative approach procedures, which, you know, we're just now releasing the first of what we call our community flight procedure packages, which you can see here on the right. And I'll pull some of those open here in a second to go through them in a bit more detail. And our goal with the community flight procedure packages is to really explore as much as we can about these concepts that we have that we will in the future, once we've gotten feedback from the community and collectively figured out which ones we think will be the best in terms of noise benefit to the residents of the Bay Area. Once we figured out which ones those are, then the airport will make the request and the FAA will go through its normal development process, including an FAA independent NEPA analysis. For now, what we're putting into the CFPPs as the airport, as a project team, is our best kind of engineered analysis of noise information and air traffic implications. So I'm gonna talk about those in just a quick second. But the last thing I'd like to talk about from the handout is this interesting opportunity that has arisen here on page 7. And, you know, we as a project team, we've been, you know, getting a lot of great information and insight from the residents from this roundtable and the technical working group about what the real life experience of residents on the ground might be when the overlay procedures start and when the innovative procedures come into effect. And so United Airlines, who has been participating with us for some time, you know, as a part of our flight procedures subcommittee, has offered to make some of their aircraft available to help us with real world flight evaluations for noise collection purposes, not only of some of our innovative concepts, but our existing procedures and the overlay approaches. So the opportunity for us is coming up here in the next few months to work with United to gather that data. And all of the noise information that we collect is really going to serve 2 purposes. One of them is to help us share that information with this group about what that looks like in terms of the overlay approaches and what folks can expect. And also to look at the more innovative procedures, because as you'll start to see in the CFPP, there's some interesting things that I think would all like to discover more about relative to aerodynamic braking. So that's the primary information we have in the packet here. What I'd like to do is quickly jump to the webpage because this is where we would like to allow or draw everyone's attention to where to go to get more information about the GLS procedures and get the latest versions of the community flight procedure packages. I'll go through this very quickly, and then I'll go back to the CFPPs, and then I'll give back my time. So if you come to the noise.flysfo.com webpage, you'll be greeted with this particular layout. I'm just going to use the default location so that we can jump in, and I'll hit the continue button. Obviously, if you've got a specific address that you'd like to evaluate, you can type it in there. And what the airport team has done to this particular webpage is we've added another tab right here called GBAS. And if you click on the GBAS tab, you'll be given 3 new sections of information to review. This one has more information about the ground-based augmentation system as we understand it. This section here is what I'm going to click on in just a second, where we have all of our, or where we will stage all of our information for innovative approaches. And then we have a section here where we're trying to host our presentations like the one here today, so that people can have kind of a common repository of where to go to see past and future discussions. One of the more important topics, so I'm clicking on the GBAS Innovative Approach Procedures button, and we have 2 examples today up on the website. Both of them are to the innovative GLS Alpha approach to 28 right, which is a identical lateral overlay of the existing RNAV approach to 28 right with just slightly higher altitudes. And there's 2 neat things you can do here. The first one is you can click on this download button and you'll get a copy of the community flight procedure package as a PDF. The very exciting thing, at least in my opinion, exciting, is we wanted to make sure that we enabled the residents to view the noise information that's contained in the CFPP down to kind of the block level, if you can think about it that way. And so what we have here is kind of an interactive way to explore the noise information. Right now, because we're still kind of in draft format for our CFPPs and our noise data, we've only got 2 different generic aircraft types available for the 2 different approaches, one from Eddie and one from Archie. This will allow people to zoom in all the way, kind of down to the street level, and view, the possible changes, green being a beneficial change. We think, based on our analysis, where we believe the noise contour might be shrinking and moving away from where it is today, and the purple areas where it might potentially be increasing. As an example, this wide body aircraft has some out here. So that's the new information that's on the website. I know I'm going very quickly. The last thing I'll talk about here is what those community flight procedure packages look like. To the chair, I'm going to go through this very, very quickly, respecting that there's only about 10 minutes left on our time for today. But just to say that this is a draft version of the community flight procedure packages. And the reason why I want to emphasize the word draft is because we would like this technical working group in particular's feedback about this packet and any additional information that needs to be added into it. So we think we've done our best as a project team to make a good start. And what you'll see in these CFPPs is information kind of about the procedure itself. We have some textual descriptions. Sorry, I'm going way too fast. As I go into the second page, we have side-by-side comparisons of the nearest existing approach on the left and what that approach might look like if you were more pilot-oriented and wanted to really explore pieces. We have the static images of noise here, along with potential single sound exposure level, single event sound exposure level noise analysis here, including potential affected population counts based on the 2010 census. We have some very important information here, which I'm not going to have time to get into today, about how we're looking at the aircraft itself and its altitude, speed, and thrust profiles. And then so you'll see these pages repeated once for example, here's narrow body 1, here's wide body 1. We do intend to add more aircraft. We're just in the draft phase at the moment. And then we have a summary here, which we're hoping can help everybody in their future decision-making about determining which of the innovative procedures are maybe the best candidates for the airport to take forward later on. And then we have some additional information kind of towards the back of the packet, a little bit of a glossary. I really appreciate the time here today. I know I've gone very, very quickly, but I want to pass my time back to the chair to be able to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon. Before we go forward, please take a breath. So appreciate you doing this quickly. I know that we do have some members of the public who are very interested in this, and they are waiting to comment. I do appreciate it, and you and I spent some time offline where you helped me understand some of this thing much better. So I do appreciate that. I'm no expert by no means, but I feel a lot better about it. To clarify, the RNAV overlay is not what we're discussing. That is what we're talking about is today, the innovative approaches and how we're going to move forward with those and how we're going to bring this forward to the community. So with that, I'm going to open it to my colleagues to see if you guys have any questions for Mr. Hanna. I hear crickets. So no hands raised. I'm sorry, I cannot see the hands.
Terry O'Connell has her
Terry
hand.
O'Connell, she raised her analog hand.
I just wanted to, can you hear me? Yes, I just wanted to yield my time back to the public because I think a lot of their questions are going to be more informed than mine would be. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Any other members that would like to ask a question before we go to the public? Okay, I'm seeing no hands and hearing no voices. So with that, Ms. Lujan, if we could go to see the members of the public.
Thank you, Chair. We're now opening public comment for item number 2. As a reminder, if you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand through the Zoom feature. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise and unraise your hand. Mr. Chairman, I do have one written comment on this item from Rebecca Ward. This comment was sent to committee members ahead of time. And I do see 2 hands raised for this item. I am first going to call on Mark Scholl. Hold on just a moment while I put my timer up. Mark Scholl, please accept this invitation, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you. Hi, Paul. Yeah, that's progress and I appreciate it. I would like to make sure that, and I'll read everything you have in detail. One of my big issues has been like when this first started, we were able to get quite detailed feedback and ask questions and get responses. And really, now that we're trying to put it over the line, the more we can do that, I think the better. I do have some quick questions now. So for example, what will be the effect of the GLS on the special approach procedures like the tiptoe and FMS Quiet Bridge? For example, these are 5,000 at side-by. Will they continue to exist? Will ATC assign them? Or are they going to go away like Bodega East seems to be going away? I'd also, again, what's the plan for the transition at Eddy, which is otherwise known as the Eddy Speed Break? And, you know, this is a location where the FAA and airlines have agreed to keep the energy high to that point, but to enable sequencing, late sequencing vectors. But for planes that stay on the course, they need to slow down and lose altitude fast, which has been very noisy. So it's something that's been a big problem for us. I'm also worried about the fact that the GBAS team has not been able to coordinate with the PBN team that redesigned Surfer 5 a year ago. The SFO noise office was on the design consensus meetings, but not the GBAS teams where it really matters. And, you know, it's not just Eddy, but one of the big challenges for the Surfer 5 team has been procedural separation from Oakland and SFO departures over Monterey Bay. So I guess I would wonder, and this is why I think coordination is so important, will a lot of the enhanced things that you're talking about be possible if there are issues of separation upstream? Basically, again, the thing is, any opportunity to have more detailed questions and answers would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's just wait on the answers. I hope you're taking notes, Paul. But let's go with the other public comment before we answer any. I mean, I think some of those are extremely technical. I lost me on 2/3 of it. So let's go to the next question.
I do see Mary Jo Fremont. Mary Jo, please accept this invitation, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
We can't hear you. You're probably still muted.
She's unmuted, but.
Ms. Freeman, are you there?
Yes, I was muted after I unmuted. Anyway, the GBAS questions submitted to SFO by the STSC Roundtable last January and by Darlene and me in November 2020 remain unanswered. At the April 7th TWG meetings, we requested answers. Today, we didn't get answers on many important questions. In a May 10th letter on GBAS, Ivar Satero stated that the public will be able to comment following each TWG meeting. That's good. I hope that SFO will commit to publish on their website all submitted comments, including the all questions mentioned, and post the answers in a timely manner. The direct community engagement with non-SFO RT members. SFO presented GBAS outside this roundtable only once in October 2018, despite several requests for direct engagement with non-SFO roundtable members. GBAS overlay, Paul Anna did a good presentation. He said outside the red zone, the GBAS overlay should be the same as the current procedures. Should be or will be, and when will SFO know? Ivar also stated that SFO is looking into measuring noise before and after the implementation. So when will we see the noise monitoring plan on the evaluation flights with United? And finally, I'd like to request again that SFO or the roundtable ask the FAA to share the GBAS overlay environmental review analysis before it is signed off. SFO or this roundtable are official channels to communicate with the FAA. And finally, on the 80 innovative approach, please address the restriction imposed by the FAA to keep 80 at 6,000 feet. In other words, what altitude would avoid the noise increase caused by the FAA restriction? And what noise reduction could be expected if the FAA agreed to work with SFO on an innovative approach that would use the same ground track but terminate earlier south of 80? Would it reduce noise? Where? By how much? Would it help brakes arrivals to San Jose? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, there are no more hands raised for this item.
Very good. And I'm going to go back to Mr. Hanna. And again, we don't have a lot of time, so some of the questions were highly technical. And I think that those will have to be responded in a different way. But if you have a quick answer, I believe there's some of Ms. Freeman's questions that were actually pretty, I have the same question. So if you could, Mr. Hanna.
I'd like to actually maybe pass this to Bert Ganong to answer two of the specific questions that I think I didn't cover that are important. One of them is about questions and answers on the SFO GBAS website and the timeline for those and where to find them. And the other one is about non-roundtable engagements. Bert, do you want to quickly speak to those?
As far as the non-roundtable engagements, right now we're going through with City Council Palo Alto, looking at the 9th of May. Don't hold me to it right now. They still have to lock it down, but that's what we're looking at.
June, sorry.
For an outside meeting.
June, I'm sorry, could you clarify the date?
It would be 9 May at this point, but don't hold me to it. That's what we're talking.
You mean
I'm
June?
sorry, 9 June?
No, sorry, correct, June. It'd be
Thank you.
about 5. So that's what we're tentatively talking.
Okay, and did you have any other quick responses to any of the other issues, or?
I think
with that detail, no, I don't.
Very good. Okay.
Go ahead.
So Mr. Schull, we'll have to, we do have Mr. Schull's contact information and we can try to respond to some of those questions. Again, I didn't even understand the question, never mind trying to answer it. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to the members here. And do we have any comments or any questions that you have before we move on? Colleagues, any raised hands? Again, I don't see any raised hands. So with that, then, so here's, again, I hate to sound like a broken record. The roundtable, this process that we're involved in is not the regular RNAV overlay. We are talking about the innovative procedures, and that's what we are involved in. We've had some great conversations with SFO about how we're going to handle this process. I think this is a great indication of how we're going to go moving forward. There's a lot of information to be digested, probably a lot of questions like Mr. Scholl had and Ms. Freeman had. So I think that we have more homework to do. But with that, I really appreciate, Mr. Hanna, your presentation, and I'm amazed at how you can talk for that long without taking a breath, but that was wonderful. And I do look forward to seeing this process. I do believe that it is going to be better for many of the residents underneath those flight paths. And so I look forward to trying to present that to the community so we can all agree on that. So with that, thank you very much, gentlemen. Look forward to our next meeting and we will talk soon. Thank you. But don't leave me yet, because the next one I think includes you too, Bert. So I'm going to move on to the status of the Title 21 reports. We have now received from 2017 Q to Q1 2021 on those Title 21 reports, and they all meet the letter of the law. Included in the packet of the review letter from HMMH. And so with that, Bert, is there anything you'd like to say about the Title 21 reports?
We're just happy to get those completed. We also have them posted on the flysfo.com/noise website under reports. And we look forward to a continuing cycle going forward where we'll maintain 5-year history online.
Perfect. Thank you. And Michelle, was there anything I missed on my presentation that you would like to add?
No, just that HMMH has conducted their review of the content to ensure that it's consistent with state law. It is. We will be sending it to Caltrans on behalf of San Mateo County, bringing that up to speed. And I don't know if Justin has any long-term trends he wants to comment on. We also have a member of the public who submitted something that was sent to the committee that I'm prepared to show at your convenience.
Okay, I'm going to go first to Justin. If you have any comments, Justin, on your review and on the letter that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, just, I mean, we conducted our review of all those quarterly reports. Thank you, Bert. They do comply with the requirements of Title 21 in terms of what should be submitted. In terms of quarterly to quarterly contour trends, not surprisingly, they follow the trends of operations, especially in the time frame that we're looking during, at the start of the pandemic and up until today. So you're seeing a pretty dramatic drop in the size of the contours being submitted. But nevertheless, the contours being produced by the model are still being adjusted per noise monitoring values that Bert and his staff are collecting and analyzing and cleaning and doing all that stuff. So, but yes, those are the trends observed, which are closely related to the number of operations.
And I know that Bert had some idea he might be moving NMT 8, and I don't know if there's any status update on that or next steps.
As I mentioned before, we can go ahead and take that off the table for now. It'll stay where it is. We'll go ahead and revisit that when the time comes. We'll let you know when it's time to put it back on the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Bert. And Michelle, you wanted to present, I believe is the information from Mr. Grace. Is that what you were going to present?
Chair, I do see Terry O'Connell with her hand raised.
Okay. Terry.
I'll be as brief as I can. I really appreciate that the Title 21 reports have been given to us and are on the website. These reports really give information that's much easier to extrapolate long-term trends than the director's report. And so given this, I think the roundtable and the public will have historical data that can show the changes and shifts in noise and flight activity. Peter Grace forwarded a graph that he put together easily for a 1-year period using some of the noise monitors here in the Brisbane area. And it really shows a lot of data and trends. And when we get the reports from prior years, and I'm not sure when those will be made available, it's really going to give us a lot more information that we can see what trends and shifting of noise and changes in noise have happened. So I'm hoping that Bert will get those earlier reports into the system, and that when we get the quarterly reports out in the future, we assign some time to look at them as a roundtable so that we can really see what the trends are happening and give it more than a 5-minute review, because I think those reports are really going to start showing data that can be historically broadened and give us a lot of information. So I've sort of, one of the other things that when we get those earlier reports, some of the noise data might be interesting to get community noise history by going back to when 9/11 happened and we had no flights. And so I think there's a lot of really specific data in this that will be helpful. And I will leave my comments at that.
Great, thank you. Any other members? And any other member comments?
Yeah,
and if not, then I'll bring it back to Michelle to share. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jenna.
And Schneider with her hand raised.
Oh, Member Snyder.
Thank you, Chair. Michelle, just a question. I know we're scheduling the next ground-based noise meeting. It might be a good idea to put the Title 21 information as an agenda item on that so that we could look at it from a low frequency noise perspective.
Will do.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Member Snyder. And Michelle, you said you had something to share that had been sent in.
Peter Grace has his hand raised, and he communicated that he'd like to talk on this slide that I have available and ready. So if we can queue up Jonathan.
So let's just do that. Let's go to the public comment, and I will put up Mr. Grace will be my first public comment. So Mr. Grace, if you would please unmute yourself.
Please unmute your mic, accept this invitation, and begin speaking.
Mr. Comments are about this, are not on this slide. This is an example of, I've looked at the monitors that record flights turning from runway 1 and turning west over the peninsula and Oakland. And they're set, the noise, the CNLs.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're breaking up, Mr. Grace. I can't hear you. Peter,
he's unmuted.
You know, we heard you at the beginning and then we lost you, Mr. Grace. So
I require a full 2 minutes for.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I have a longer series of questions that I want to go and speak about that require the full 2 minutes.
Very good. We
get off now.
Go ahead.
Can I give my longer report?
Yeah, but go ahead, Ed. Yeah, this is your opportunity right now. Go ahead, Mr. Grace.
And I don't want a time limit. As you know, status of Title 21 reports has been an issue for several years. The Roundtable has been responsive, and the SFO Noise Office presented on February 19th, 2019 on Title 21. I asked at the meeting about the status of the reports. My questions were not answered, and nor from the San Mateo County representative. The response from Caltrans to my Freedom of Information request for the SFO Title 21 reports in October 2020 indicated that no Title 21 reports have been filed 2009 Q4 to present for SFO. Is it the intention for the public to have to do Freedom of Information requests to get answers to airport noise issues at the Roundtable? This also raises several issues I want the Roundtable to hear and address. The Roundtable needs to be more transparent and responsive to the public's questions. At the 2/19/19/20 Title 21 presentation, I have to conclude that many present knew that no reports had been filed, but none of the public knew, and it wasn't disclosed. Secondly, the Roundtable needs to exert a stronger oversight role and be more inquisitive on Title 21 and indeed on other issues. Please listen to the public. The public has skin in the game and their analysis is free. So I end with 3 asks. Please have Darlene Yapley give her UC Davis A&E presentation on aviation impacts to the full roundtable. The roundtable would benefit from a short and accurate community perspective. Secondly, please demonstrate the public has heard and sum up what the public says in the minutes, or use transcription software so the oral history is not lost. Thirdly, and most importantly, at the 1/21/21 Technical Working Group meeting, Mary Jo Fremont spoke about noise methodology to count noise events. Chairman Ricardo agreed in his summary that there should be a report comparing the threshold and duration method that SFO currently uses and the flight tracking method that Reagan National Airport uses. Enviro Suite is the consultant for both airports. Please give us an update on the status of the report. Thank you very much for the extra time.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Appreciate your comments. And with that, we are well over our time. So do we have any other members of the public?
We do. We have one more hand raised from Mr. Mark Scholl.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Mr. Scholl, please accept this invitation, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Thank you. I'm a little confused about the discussion here. Title 21 reports are a compliance report where the County of San Mateo is required to certify to Caltrans that SFO is in compliance with Title 21. Caltrans has allowed a special accommodation at SFO where the roundtable advises the county on whether they should approve the compliance that they're in compliance or not. And in past, and I don't know if this is still true, those municipalities that are actually within the noise zones are also allowed to request hearings if they do not agree with the county's recommendation. So I just want to kind of, I just want to point out that, the process, not having done this process of the county certifying and that it's in compliance for this number of years is pretty disturbing. And also I'm a little worried that the purpose of the work that's being done and submitted by SFO, it's for compliance rather than general tracking for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Chair, I don't see any more hands raised.
Right. I'll send it back to my member. Do you have any final comments? And to Michelle, do you have any final comments that you would like to address, maybe some of the issues that were just brought up?
In terms of the aviation law and what we just heard, compliance with the state law is the determination to make. There's nothing in the state law that references the process that was just described in terms of individual municipalities being able to, I don't exactly know what all that, the county determination, et cetera. So I don't know about all of that, but all I know is that San Mateo County, I'm a San Mateo County staff member. We have reviewed through our aviation consultant consistency with the state law. We, on behalf of the county, will be submitting it to Caltrans that it's consistent with state law, and we are following the law with that regard. And if Justin wants to speak anything more about that, then feel free.
Justin, do you have anything to add?
I do not. I think she said that well, so thank you.
And you guys, I'm really, really sorry. I think these, again, really important items that we were discussing, so I really apologize for keeping you an extra 15 minutes. I know time is valuable, and with that, I think we will adjourn. Thank you all for all your time, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you.